Brought to you by Pfizer.
In this video, you're going to see the future.
Hello there, you Awakening Wonders. Thanks for joining me today for Stay Free with Russell Brand. Lot going on, breaking news. Donald Trump does have at least partial immunity, it appears. That's at least the ruling of the Supreme Court. Let's have a look.
This is an ABC News special report.
Good morning. I'm Whit Johnson in New York. We're coming on the air with major breaking news from the U.S. Supreme Court on the final day of its term.
So I'm going to comb this bit of my hair up a little bit because I'm concerned that it's out of line with the rest of the do.
Court has just issued one of its most consequential rulings in recent decades, a decision that not only affects the 2024 race for president following last week's contentious debate, but also the future of the presidency itself from this day forward. Moments ago, the justices ruling on Donald Trump's claim of absolute immunity from criminal prosecution, his core argument in both the 2020 election interference case in Washington, D.C. and the classified documents case in Florida. The court deciding this morning presidents do have immunity for official acts, but there is no immunity for non-official acts. The court then sending it back to the lower courts.
We beat Medicare this year. We beat Medicare this year. Well, it's extraordinary, isn't it, to watch this unraveling of the mainstream media. It's a bit like, isn't it, conspiracy theory to conspiracy fact more broadly. Like, haven't you been saying for the last couple of years, I'm a bit worried about Joe Biden and whether or not he might have premature, or not even premature senility at an appropriate age, if ever such a sad and tragic thing could ever be called appropriate. And now, finally, after it was shown live, it's being covered. In a way, it's no different than the reporting around the pandemic or the reporting around the origins of the Ukraine-Russia conflict. For a while, there's this kind of low hum of what they regard as conspiracy theories and hate speak, where people are saying, I'm a bit worried about Joe Biden. That doesn't look right. He's wandered off in the wrong direction. He didn't finish that sentence correctly. He's making up numbers. He can't just say that. All these things about corn pop, none of this stuff makes sense. And eventually it sort of permeates the sphere of the mainstream. And I can't work out what's happening because their hysteria suggests that it's a natural and organic reaction. And yet it does seem tempting to consider, as Vivek Ramaswamy suggested, along with many others, that the reason that the debates were 3 months early was precisely to afford them the ability to replace Joe Biden. And certainly that seems like an increasingly necessary outcome. But when you want reliable reactions, when you want the truth, even if he's not on CNN as much as we'd like, you turn to Brian Stelter. That's what we're going to do now. You may have turned away from Brian Stelter as I have turned away from sin. But Brian is here for you, right here, right now.
Look, if you're in a battle between someone who lies really confidently versus someone who mostly tells the truth but really incoherently, the confident liar is always going to win. And I think many millions of Americans...
That's what he's framing this as now, is that the lies of Donald Trump are brilliantly delivered, whereas Joe Biden's lies are falteringly delivered, for surely there was much fact-checking to be had. So part of the legacy media are scrambling to reframe this. We saw Rachel Maddow kind of say that over the course of it, he got stronger and stronger, and by the end of it, he was brilliant and bombastic and rousing and Churchillian. And another portion of the establishment media, but the establishment more generally, are looking at ways to dispatch Joe Biden.
Who don't want to see Trump reelected were yelling at their TVs, wanting Biden to fight back harder, wanting to see an actual debate, an actual fight. They didn't get that. They came away disappointed. And it makes me wonder if there will be any more debates at all.
We'll look at how this is being framed over the course of the show, but we posted this on X earlier today. If you're watching us on YouTube, by the way, guys, we'll be there for about another 10 minutes. Then we'll be exclusively available on Rumble, and we're not just going to be discussing the debate and its fallout, and the fact that, in a way, it can be seen as a pivotal moment in the decay of our own trust in establishment narratives, perhaps a moment where they could no longer hold together the hydrogen-filled, billowy balloon of nonsense that they have tried to place before our faces, a barrage, in a sense, of nonsense and lies. We'll be talking about that, but we'll also be talking a bit about RFK. We'll be talking about the new request from Zelensky that the airspace above Ukraine be protected by NATO, ultimately bringing us and the organisations that we fund further into this conflict. We'll be looking at some of the stuff that Tucker's been saying on tour in Australia. But first, let's have a look at Joe Biden as he was in just 2019, where I don't remember thinking of him as a particularly garrulous and lucid individual, but it is pretty alarming to see him in 2019 versus now. And when you watch this, I think the important thing to bear in mind, and let me know what you think, is that Joe Scarborough and the New York Times and various other outlets have literally been saying things like he's as sharp as a tack. So forget, like, if you can, Joe Biden, forget the fact that he's nominally the most powerful man in the world. Forget the fact that he himself makes all sorts of extraordinary claims with motivations that are, who knows what personal motivations people have, but perhaps that's forgivable and even understandable. But what's interesting is to see the legacy media attempt to reframe this. How did they not notice it before? And what is it they're trying to do now? Is it all an attempt to produce such a giddy and delirious state that none of us know what reality is anymore? But here's one thing for sure that we can rely on and actually watch in real time. This is the relationship between Joe Biden 2019 versus Joe Biden just last week.
I continue to think we have to make fundamental changes in civil rights. And those civil rights, by the way, include not just only African Americans, but the LGBT community.
He wants to get away with, get rid of the ability of Medicare
I did not oppose busing in America. What I opposed is busing ordered by the Department of Education. That's what I oppose.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if you will determine the outcome of this election. Vote, vote, vote. If you're able to vote early in your state, vote early. If you're able to vote in person, vote in person. Vote whatever way is the best way for you, because he cannot stop you. And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look.
It's got to the point where even the legacy media are starting to abandon him and rescind their support. It can still rely on a few people, but what are their motivations? When you see Nancy Pelosi, who's a figure that doesn't really inspire a great deal of trust, going to bat for Joe Biden, you have to wonder if this cadre of senescence and decay is somehow the living symbol of the decline that we are living through. Elsewhere in the world, the media establishment febrilely describes a lurch to the right, as if nationalism and a connection to your land and political figures that talk about that country, your country's interests first, isn't an understandable response to this kind of peculiar, soulless, vampiric, Nosferatu-style zombie globalism that has no roots, that has no clear human aims, that makes me, at least, consider that some gaseous demonic power has co-opted the world. And on that note...
And, while he may be saying we're enablers, we see Joe Biden up close. We know how attuned he...
What it was we were too far away from him. If you just get very, very close to television, you get real near, lean right into that debate, you suddenly realise he's like Oscar Wilde in there. He's firing off the epigrams and the bon mots at a rate of knots. It can't be distance, Nancy. Is there another reason?
He arts to the issues, how informed he is. And I debate with him about legislation and not debate, but...
Do they have imagine seeing Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden debating together. That would be electrifying, wouldn't it? That'd be like Gore Vidal and William Buckley again. Throw James Baldwin into the mix. It would be extraordinary to watch those skilled, steel on steel, sharp minds. Sparks are flying. And the real winner, democracy itself. Or the Republic. I know that you have some strong attachments to those words there in your country, and I have some strong attachments to these principles: authenticity and integrity, decentralization, and the sense that you somehow are tribally, viscerally connected to the way that your community is run. Why should we be forced to conceptualize vast tracts of 333 million people populated nation continents? It's a difficult thing to bring into your mind and hold together, certainly for Joe Biden these days, and I would imagine for Nancy Pelosi too. And it's only worth undertaking if there's some extraordinary benefit to it. Maybe what we are witnessing now is something more significant than whether or not you should vote for Joe Biden or Donald Trump in November, or Keir Starmer or Rishi Sunak in a couple of days in my country, or whoever you're being offered in France. It might be a little more fundamental than that, I sometimes think. Isn't this time for us to summon somehow collectively a new vision? And some of that may yet be arcane and simple, that politics is managerial. Politics is about organisation and logistics. Maybe the vision has to be drawn from our hearts, from our collective spirits. No longer can we perhaps rely on these corporatist, globalist, odd figures to tell us what it is to be an American or a French person or a Chinese person or a Brit or a European. Maybe we can't look to them anymore. Joey Yodo in the chat says, it's not a battle of good versus evil, it's a battle of morality versus amorality. But I suppose, Joey Yodo, from what would morality be derived if not an ontological principle of goodness itself? You can't derive morality from anything other than a universal notion of good, unless you're saying local cultural customs that amount to goodness, which are kind of strategic and derived perhaps from evolutionary biology. That's not going to work, because I do believe in absolute good and absolute bad, and maybe this is an argument we'll get into at a later time. If you're watching us on YouTube, we'll be there for another couple of minutes, then we're going to get into what's going on in France. We're still looking at the fallout of that astonishing debate, and we'll be looking at the likelihood that while we're not distracted, but perhaps engaged by watching the media's sort of swirl of confusion, bafflement, and repositioning, that we still are edging closer to an apocalypse. There are still regional disputes that are terrifying, breathtaking and galling, taking place right now, even as we speak and reflect. And just try not to recall this moment. As they say in these spaces these days, well, this didn't age well.
People would ask me, knowing what you know now, do you wish like you had a third term? And I used to say, you know what, if I could make an arrangement where I had a stand-in, a front man or front woman, and they had an earpiece in, and I was just in my basement in my sweats, looking through the stuff, and then I could sort of deliver the lines, but somebody else was doing all the talking and ceremony. Wow. I'd be fine with it.
The actual truth is, I'm sure that's a sort of a joke, that it's not a cadre of ex-presidents that runs America, but powerful global corporate interests that, for the purposes of corroboration, we can track and look at financial dominion and resource power. We can see how that maps and moves and is maneuvered, and who spends money on donations and who spends money on lobbying, and who remains wealthy, powerful and influential regardless of which party is in government and which interests donate to both parties. That would be a way of tracking it. You can get into some occultism if you want to. Why not? It's a good enough pastime. But do you really think that it's that you saw Donald Trump's Truth Social post the weekend at Bernie's one, I'm sure. I don't reckon that it's actually the Obamas jostling Biden through this. I feel that there's a kind of Democrat Party aristocracy that move through the hierarchies of that party, but where's real power? It's global, and it bows not to flags. Maybe maybe it bows to horns. Anyway, if there is going to be a kind of a replacement, we're going to have to look for some sort of handsome, swoonsome matinee idol who's done a pretty fantastic job there in turning California, as I understand, into a horrific land of endless crime, doubt, and yet he still himself, during COVID lockdowns, finds a little time to party. It's Gavin Newsom. He looks slick.
You were out there getting a chorus of questions about whether Biden should step down. There is panic that has set in. There is panic.
This is good. Gavin Newsom starts well. Loyalty, decency, stand up for Joe Biden. He's still the president. By the end of it, you sense that what he's actually saying is, I would be a good and very handsome president, and I wouldn't let a little thing like lockdowns get in the way of a damn good cocktail party.
Panic that has set in among people who have watched this debate, who are Democrats, people who are strategists, and some even inside Democratic campaigns. Yeah. Do you think it's unfounded?
Well, I think it's unhelpful, and I think it's unnecessary. We've got to go in and got to keep our heads high. And as I say, we've got to have the back of this president. You don't turn your back because of one performance. What kind of... It
wasn't one performance. There wasn't one performance. It was 2 years of people first gently and delicately saying, oh, no, I think Joe Biden might be senile. But we've all known for a while that the president isn't really the person that runs America. We know that these people are, generally speaking, puppets. And if there is an objection, and there clearly is within media circles and establishment circles to Donald Trump, it's perhaps because he's a kind of uncontrollable, mercurial oddity that they won't be able to puppet in the same way that they would a career politician like Joe Biden. You can just watch footage of lying his way through the decades with whatever bombast was required at the time that he was saying it. Now, Gavin Newsom, he looks to me like the very kind of person that would fulfill that role elegantly. Kissing babies, probably plays a musical instrument rather well. I bet he's got a sport that he's good at. You know, the sort of Bill Clinton, Tony Blair moves, you know, or Michelle Obama and Barack Obama sort of like doing something affable, a do that looks cool and down with kids. Maybe some fist pump, maybe just some token that you can throw out into the culture. Hasn't Gavin Newsom got a nice hairline? Doesn't he look quite refined? Couldn't he be some sort of Jason Bourne character, some elongated Yankee Bond? I don't know. What do we want from politics these days? The bar seems to have been set so very low, and yet they manage the limbo beneath it.
Party does that. It's been a masterclass. 15.6 million jobs.
Masterclass. That's a masterclass. Forget the debate. Anyone can have 90 minutes off and ignore someone that's landing on a parachute just in front of them, and anyone could walk the wrong direction off a stage. We've all done it. But other than that, there's been a masterclass.
That's 8 times more than the last 3 Republican presidents combined. The only thing the last 3 Republican presidents have in common is recessions. Democrats deliver. This president has delivered. We need to deliver for him at this moment. With all due respect, the more time we start...
In this bit, look at this bit.
Having these conversations go down these rabbit holes is unhelpful to our democracy, our fate and future of this country, the world. They need us right now to step up, and that's exactly what I intend to do.
I'm going to step right up, swoop right in, peel off my top and run this country if anybody asks me. But if it's not going to be Gavin Newsom, it's going to be, in the figure of the vice president, we have a wonderful option. I saw a post that said it's impossible to replace Joe Biden as the candidate for the next election without acknowledging that he's not fit for office. So how do we handle that? I have a solution for you. It's Kamala Harris, and she has a vision, and it's a good one. See if by the 4th or 5th time she says this, you can understand what it is she's saying.
I can imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been, you know?
What can be unburdened by what has been. What can be unburdened by what has been. What can be unburdened by what has been.
What can be unburdened by what has been. Try to understand it. You, Awakened Wonders in the locals chat. Stop watching Douglas McGregor, your early access video. You, on Rumble. Try to understand it. Try to understand what I mean. Unburdened by what has been. What?
Can be unburdened by what has been. What we can...
Someone said this to me, like, in a time of doubt, and I've had times of great doubt in my life. If someone goes to me, I go, I'm not feeling very good. I've had a very difficult day. I'm frightened. I'm nervous. I'm not sure that I'm good enough. I can't cope anymore. Kamala?
See what we believe can be unburdened by what has... What can be unburdened by what has been. What can be...
Saying it to Bill Clinton. I did some bad things in office, in this very office, as a matter of fact. I'm feeling pretty bad about it. Can't keep paying these dry cleaning bills. I don't even want to smoke anymore. What can be is unburdened by what might have been. Wait a minute. Like maybe it's like a koan or something. Maybe if you sort of reflect on it, there might be a moment where your mind glitches into a deeper understanding of the nature of reality, like some immanent transcendent thing. God is both within you yet beyond you. Within me yet beyond me. Within me yet beyond. Ding! Oh no, I'm just made of energy. Ding!
Unburdened by what has been. What can be. Unburdened by what has been.
What can be.
The mask version's good. Hey, listen, if you're watching us on YouTube, we're leaving right now, and it's well worth clicking that link in the description. Why? Why? Because we're talking about France's lurch to the right. What's it about? Is it anti-Islam? Is it the rise of populism? How does it relate to the Gilets jaunes movement and those protests on the very steps of Black Rock? If you're not an awakened wonder yet, become one now, because you get access to my reaction videos to historic moments. You get intimate access and connections to me. You'll be the first to learn about live events when they happen. So click the link in the description, get on over